everybody, welcome back. It's Cape Rugby TV time. Nice to have you with us. We're going to take a look at what's happening in the world of Western Province Club Rugby. A lot of action still going on, just when people thought that there was no rugby. Wow, rugby never stops. Before we get going, though, let me just say a big thanks to our partners on board with us, Score Energy Drinks. Of course, Score on board with Western Province Club Rugby and the Western Province Club Rugby Sevens, which incidentally is going to be our big focus point tonight, as well as the Under-20 tournament in Helderberg. And of course, CyberSmart Internet Service Providers. You can see CyberSmart behind me on the screen there, www.cybersmart.co.za. And they'll give you all your internet services and website needs, everything that you need from an internet point of view. Right, before we get going, let me welcome our guests in the studio tonight. Faisal Felton. Faisal, nice to have you back, Munir.
Hi, good evening, JP. Good evening, listeners. Always good to be back.
And viewers as well.
And viewers as well.
Alistair Tays, Ali, nice to have you back, Munir.
Good to be back, JP.
Have you been busy rugby-wise?
Yeah, we started our off-season last week.
You mentioned
as CPT.
As CPT,
Yeah.
okay. But you, when you guys start, though? When does CPT play their first game?
In February the 14th,
February the 14th?
Yeah.
Aren't you a bit early?
No, we actually on time. It's
Yeah.
off-season, and we go into our pre-season, and then competition starts.
Yeah. So, Faisal, we were talking about this last week, about how many people were talking about their planning, just work-wise. And we used to say rugby's are now, 6 months of the year, but then the game changed a bit and there was more rugby during the year. We saw it at Christmas time and New Year's time. But behind the scenes, admin, it's a 12-month job.
No, definitely. I think the one thing, JP, is you've got to move with the times. I think we still focus on in the past. You come January, some of the clubs, and you start training pre-season, in January. I think if you want to keep up with the pack, you've got to start a lot earlier than that there. So I think the one big thing for next year, especially with the amount of rugby that you're going to have, is going to be around conditioning and how you manage your players. And that there. So,
so that was exactly one of the talking points, Alistair, last week that we were talking about, is how the game has changed, is that it's not so much the coaches anymore, it's the machine behind the coaches.
Yeah, it's not just on field, it's your administration as well, the planning of the whole club.
Yeah.
And the player welfare and management going along through your off and your pre-season.
So, Faisal, what do you think in the last 10 years of rugby, 10, 15 years, what do you think has been the biggest change? I know that's an unfair question. I know it's an unfair question, but...
Yeah, I think the one big thing is, like we started off, we said it used to be seasonal, and then it sort of progressed. I think it's also the demand in terms of, the amount of rugby that we're playing.
Yeah.
So we've got to adapt, normally you'd had sevens at the end of the season, pre-season and that, and I think a lot has changed now. So the one big thing is, I think it's around the planning and preparation in terms of teams being proper planned. Even from administrative side, like Ali's mentioned, everybody's got a role and a function to play at a club. It's not just a one-man show anymore. So, there's got key role players within the club, the marketing, sponsorship.
Yeah.
I think in order for the club to be successful, all those components need to be working in that there.
Yeah, I think you've kind of grabbed the topic there that I was heading towards, is the difference in administration at a club today, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, versus where we are today. Yeah. You obviously can't, you're not just putting lights on anymore and switching lights off and locking the gate. There's constitutions and policies, and I see, Alistair, you're jumping out of your shirt. You want to get into this topic?
No, I'm just like 10 years ago, social media wasn't that of a big thing for clubs.
Yeah.
Now clubs push their social media so that they can get some leverage, get some sponsorship out there. So and that's a 12-month job.
Yep. Yeah, also on that, James, I think one key thing is survival of a club. You've got the guys that come to a club and play, and then you've got your administrators that have got to keep the club going. So the transport, everything has increased. It's washing of jerseys, transport, it's kit, it's equipment, and that there. So it's not just rock up there on the first week in April. Jerseys are lined up next to the field. There's a lot of work that goes into that.
So I got to ask you this question though, from a Western Province Rugby point of view. Western Province Rugby as a union has, in my mind, been the front-running leader of sports administration, club administration for many years. Firstly, do you think that's a fair statement to make? Or will you have a biased opinion?
No, I think we're always looking to improve. I think in terms of where we are, we're not where we should be, but I think we're pretty much close. I think the one good thing, and I always say it, is that we can only function with our clubs.
Yeah.
As individuals, as an office, nothing can happen. So we're very dependent on clubs and administrators.
But I suppose my question that I'm heading towards is, as an organization, you've got a referee structure, you've got a youth structure, you've got an education structure, you have a club structure, a school structure. I mean, there's all these various departments, high performance, women, youth, etc. My question, I suppose, is it a bit frustrating when you see that the rest of the country are not keeping up?
I always say, we always say charity begins at home. You first got to get our house in order. And I think the one thing is you're only as good as also your opposition. So it's the same as our competitions. I think firstly, we've got to make sure our competitions are strong. We've got to make sure we have strong opposition. It's pointless you having a one-sided, lopsided competition and that. And I think where we are currently at the moment, we've got to make sure when it comes to our leagues, comes to our structures and that that we're on top. The rest of the country, Western Province for years have been, we've sort of been the leaders. I think when we come to our administration, the programs that we've had, currently we got Footprint from SA Rugby, we had Scrummit in the past, and the one thing is, the systems again, it's only as good as the input that's put in. So
I suppose for the sake of fairness, it's probably, to be fair, Alistair, you might want to jump in this, it's fair to understand that the rest of the country have got other challenges to deal with. Geographically, you're not in a metro, you're not in a city 100%. Center, so it's normal that you're going to have other structures battling to keep up because geography is different. Sponsors don't necessarily want to go into certain areas. Broadcasting is different. So I think just to be fair on the rest of the country out there, I think we acknowledge that there is challenges out there. But I suppose that's also part of the spirit of what you guys do, is that the spirit of sharing information and so 100%. On.
Yeah. I think the one thing is, like you mentioned, I think geographically we are at advantage in terms of close proximity. Many of the challenges outside, I mean, we complain about transport, but the transport challenges are a lot bigger on the outside. And I think the one good thing as well, if you look at growth in Western Province, people always say rugby is dying, but we have such a huge amount of under-20s and juniors coming through from schools and that. The only problem is we can't cater for them. So the fortunate is our universities, CPUTs, UWs, Marties, UCT, having that support structures as well, and universities and institutes helps a lot in terms of creating that pathways from an education point and also from a playing perspective.
Alistair, you come from the university environment. I mean, we're having a great conversation here, folks, by the way, because it's important for you to understand, if you really want to know about rugby, you must actually know what the machines look like behind the scenes. Alistair, you come from the university environment, Technicon, I suppose, if you want to call it, but all universities. How much of a change do we see there in the progression of the game of sport in the last 10 years in universities and that? Because universities obviously form a key element of each federation.
Yeah, I just think sports in general has grown within universities. There's more participation across the sport because from a university perspective, there's been a big push on that. For a student welfare, getting students to participate in sport, and trying to merge that with the academics.
But there's
as
also
an outlet for the academic.
Your university structure's competition format is also much more serious now than it was a few years ago. You've got these USA competitions and
so you've got your varsity sport competitions, which is for cup and shield for rugby, the soccer, and then you've got your USA competitions where it's a cross-board, where more of the universities across South Africa are involved in.
All right, folks, we're having fascinating conversations, and when we come back from the break, we're going to turn our attention to the SCORE Western Province Club Rugby Sevens. The SCORE Sevens is, of course, now, I think, going in possibly a 10th year of Sevens. We'll speak to Faisal Felton about that, but probably now one of the institutions and the annual draw card of what we look forward to every year. And we often say that this is most likely the world's biggest Sevens rugby tournament, all courtesy of SCORE Energy Drinks, who's been also a kind supporter of Cape Rugby TV for so many years. So don't go away. When we come back, we'll be talking about the SCORE Sevens. Back in a sec.